Hi, I'm George Norrie, and welcome to our Coast to Coast AM YouTube channel. Have fun, tell your friends, and share us with everyone. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Coast to Coast AM's mobile app. And always remember to log on to our website at coasttocoastam.com for daily articles, the best paranormal information, and all you need to know about your favorite guests. And now you can become a Coast Insider directly through the Coast mobile app. We welcome our international listeners and even offer a free 2-week trial. So don't delay. Become an insider today. And this hour, Michael Tellinger will take your calls, and we'll continue chatting with him about slave species of the gods. Michael, I think when you think back about what has happened on this planet in its inception, how mankind got here, it truly is remarkable. Yet none of this takes away from the belief of a intelligent designer, the creator, does it?
No, it all points towards intelligent design. Everything that I've been finding here in South Africa and Southern Africa, around the world, the astonishing age of some of these ancient sites, it all points towards very specific intelligent design. I'm talking about our species. But then we got to talk about the design of everything in creation, not just our species and some of the creatures that surround us, which may be part of a very specific intelligent design and very high level of manipulation for specific reasons of interaction and interconnectedness on this particular planet. But it actually leads to a greater realization that many more situations of intelligent design are present in not just our solar system, but certainly in our galaxy and beyond in quantities that we can't even imagine. There's a fascinating book called Alien Interview, and I'm sure many of your listeners would be aware of it and would have read it. And some of the information in that book is really interesting and fascinating and consistent and resonates with a lot of the research that I've done. And I recommend it's available as a download on the internet. So go find it and read it. It'll certainly open up your eyes. It deals with the Roswell crash and some of the information that's come out of that.
Now, do you think the Anunnaki are just as puzzled as we are today about God and how to find him and why we're here? Do you think they're going through those same kinds of questions?
I don't think that they're as puzzled as we are, because we've certainly been dumbed down and forced by manipulation to be ignorant and a species with amnesia. We've really been forced to do that, to become that. The Anunnaki certainly seem a lot more connected to everything in creation, but they seem to be divided into their morality, or divided by morality as to what to do and how to apply and use their knowledge for the greater good of other beings in creation, or often, as we have seen here on this planet, for the manipulation and abuse and malicious abuse of a species that is being created, or a species on a planet that's been invaded. And this is where we need to look at Star Trek and Gene Roddenberry, what he spoke about and wrote into many of the episodes about the so-called Prime Directive and what this Prime Directive actually is. The Prime Directive, in my research, is just another word for prime resonance frequency. The prime resonance frequency of everything in creation, everything that comes from the source creator. And if it does not resonate in harmony with a prime resonance frequency, if it's not coherent with a prime resonance frequency, then it will eventually be consumed. It will disassociate, because you cannot exist in a resonant harmonic creation, which is everything in creation that resonates in harmony, because everything is based on harmonic sound and resonance. If you live in dissonance, if you exist in dissonance with that, if you breach the Prime Directive, as Star Trek told us, you will begin your own demise, because just like cancer cells. If cancer cells are created within a healthy body, your healthy body will overcome the cancer cell and eventually will expel and kill the cancer
and beat
cell
it.
and beat it. So this is all connected. It's just a beautiful story, and this is why the discoveries that I've made here in Southern Africa, the fact that we're dealing with sound and resonance and frequency as a source of energy and technology in ancient times, is all connected to our greater understanding of the laws of nature, if we can call it that. There's a whole other big discussion we can have about that. The laws of nature and our understanding of it, and the prime resonance frequency or the prime directive. It's a beautiful story that starts to make sense.
Do you believe that the flood of Noah was set up by the Anunnaki to wipe out what was on this planet, or was it a godlike disaster?
Well, at this stage, my research points to the fact that they may not have set it up; that they just were aware of it. They had their way of protecting themselves, because there were not that many of them, of the elite Anunnaki, that could retreat to their space stations and their, off-world satellites, that they could be safe in there and miss the asteroid or miss the comet that caused the flyby of a giant planet, and avoid the turbulence on that really hit planet Earth and caused the so-called floods or the devastation. So they wrote it out. They had the knowledge and the capacity to write it out. At this stage, I don't believe that they were responsible for creating it. They just knew it was coming, and they used it as opportunistically to get rid of a species that was just growing in numbers. They couldn't control them. And right now, what's happening is not much different. Just like the destruction of humanity and during the flood came from the sky, today we get the destruction of humanity coming from the sky in the form of chemtrails.
Yeah.
So it's just a different kind of godlike act, act of the gods. At the moment, it's an act of the global elite, using the industrial military complex and a few secret missions to keep poisoning and destroying humanity. Every living entity, every living being, every living creature, every plant, anything in existence is filled with spirit of the Creator. But this once again opens up another channel of discussion. Well, what is spirit? What is the spirit of the Creator? And this is where the prime resonance frequency, the prime directive, and this starts to play a very important role. So my understanding of it right now is that yes, absolutely, everything is filled with spirit, and specifically human beings connected to spirit at a very high energetic level. And very high level of consciousness, and it is that high level of consciousness that infiltrates through spirit our bodies at birth, that the global elite and the royal bloodlines have been suppressing for thousands of years. Our ability to communicate telepathically, our inherent nature to be godlike creatures, godlike beings, has been beaten out of us by those who've turned us into their slaves and their tools of manipulation, and this is why this is so painful for us and for most humans. Most people live lives of misery and confusion, not understanding why life is so difficult, why things are so hard, why we have to struggle to survive. Because deep inside is the beating spirit of connected to Source, Creator, that tells us that something is wrong with this picture, but we don't understand what is wrong with this picture until we reach this point in our lives where we start to reach what many call enlightenment, and we start asking questions, and we open ourselves to answers that previously have been far-fetched to most people, and we realize that this information and the rabbit hole is a lot deeper than we realized, and we start to awaken, and our DNA kicks in, because our DNA is actually a manifestation of the creation of all things. In our DNA, which is a manifestation of the source resonance of the Creator, starts to reawaken, and that gives us, as spiritual beings and spiritual entities the capacity to reach higher thoughts and start to reawaken and realize who we truly are, that we are infinitely potential spiritual beings trapped in a physical body and trapped by the confines of this physical reality that we're in. It is a phenomenal story of awakening, the mass global awakening of billions of people, billions of spirits that have been suppressed and imprisoned on this planet.
Doesn't it tell you, too, Michael, that with all the projected different species in this universe, life, that random, that this, was not a fluke of nature for life to exist on all these places? I mean, one might argue if it was just us, hey, maybe something in the universe helped create this that wasn't God. But the fact that we believe that there's so much life out there, it had to have been created and developed, don't you think?
Well, yeah, again, this is where the difference between developed and created by advanced beings of physical form that sometimes manipulate the physical form for their own benefit, as opposed to advanced beings of higher consciousness that may not be of a physical form, that may exist in other dimensions and can create and manipulate infinitely by thought, as thought being a projection of the creative source, the creator of the source resonant frequency, and which should allow us as well as human beings to be able to manifest and create with our thoughts and words and sounds. And once again, this brings us back to the manipulation of humanity, and the Tower of Babel event, where we're told that the gods looked down at humanity and realized that they were reaching high levels of consciousness, and they suddenly realized that the people could start manifesting and could manifest and create things with their thoughts and their words, and the gods said, let us go down and destroy their language, because if they can do this, they can become like us. And that has nothing to do with being able to build a very big building or a tower. It's got everything to do with realizing that the species that was created was waking up, was reaching high levels of consciousness, that they were stringing together the ability to think and speak words and combine the two forces of thought and sound and being able to manifest, and that really made the new species godlike. And this was not good for the manipulators and those who wanted to continue abusing the species and dumb them down. Once you get, this is the beautiful thing, George, is once you really come to terms with the understanding of sound source, sound resonance and frequency, everything in creation is very, very easy to explain. How to cure disease, how to manifest, how to communicate your thoughts to everyone and everything instantaneously throughout the universe and throughout everything in creation, and some of the scientific discoveries, and specifically some of the breakthrough discoveries and scientific theorems posted by people like Nassim Haramein, his studies into the vacuum and the density of the vacuum, and if you apply that to resonance and the speed of sound, you realize that we're now really knocking on the door of understanding how all this fits together. Sound and resonance and the 0 point field, and how things just suddenly pop up into manifestation. It's a phenomenal point that we are sitting at right now, where billions of people can tap into this knowledge virtually overnight once you get these simple few ideas, I guess. UFOs are not just flying around in the sky. They're what are they called? Unidentified submerged objects, USOs as well.
True.
And they're probably more USOs than they are UFOs, because it's a lot easier to hide a UFO under the ocean, and nobody will ever see it. We don't know how to get down there. We live in a different universe up here on the surface of the planet, while there's a whole other world under the oceans, which, incidentally, just remind ourselves, the mountains of the oceans are 3 times, I believe, or so, I can't remember but a lot higher than the highest mountains on the surface of the earth. and the ocean occupied 2/3 of the planet. So there's a lot more space in the oceans than there is on the surface of the Earth, because there you can travel up and down as well in the water, and you're not just restricted to the surface of the Earth that we are on the outside. So there's a lot more going on in the oceans on our planet than we could ever possibly imagine. So we've got to keep our minds open to all possibilities. All of this research that I've been doing into origins of humankind, the ancient civilizations, discovering this phenomenal ancient technology of sound and phasers that they used, having the tools that they used in my hands, and not only having them thinking that they are tools, having the scientific evidence and the measurements that we're dealing with advanced technology, because we got several readings, dozens of readings, electronic measurements of the stone circles, of the stone tools, the sacred stones, the donut-shaped stones with the holes in them that emit incredible amounts of energy. I'm talking about supersound technology. I'm talking about hypersound. So having a real scientific understanding of this advanced technology in our hands, the point is that what do we do with all this knowledge and this information? And it's that really brought me to realizing that humanity lived without money for much longer than we've been living with money.
Michael, the slave species of the gods theory, of course, with the Anunnaki, they apparently, when they did leave, they went back to their planet. They had come here originally to look for gold to protect their planet's atmosphere. Were they fighting here? I believe they were, weren't they?
Are you talking about fighting other beings or fighting
amongst themselves? Amongst themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly what Zecharia Sitchin suggests, is that the Anunnaki, had a misunderstanding amongst themselves, and the War of the Gods was the result of it, and a lot of turmoil and turbulence occurred on this planet. I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't just fighting between themselves. It was also actually fighting other beings from other planets and other parts of the universe that were here at that time, trying to protect their part of the world, and already in those early days, reaching agreements and pacts with other beings that this part of the world belongs to us and that part belongs to you, and don't come and trespass in our area. We're mining the gold here. Leave us alone. And then. And this is, unfortunately, where we get the corporate hierarchical structure and the control systems that we have today seem to be handed down to us from the Anunnaki.
If they were here 300 or 400,000 years ago, there is that possibility that they aren't even around anymore, that, they have long lived out their usefulness. They've maybe obliterated themselves. Who knows?
Yeah, the Anunnaki are a lot more devious, and when I say devious, actually, I shouldn't say that. They're far more resilient. That's the word I'm looking for. Than that. First of all, we're dealing with beings that are they're multidimensional beings at this stage. They're not just in a physical form. It seems that their planet Nibiru is not just here in a physical form. It has also got the ability. It's more than just a planet. It actually can. It can move through space and time. The information and the new knowledge and information about the Anunnaki, their abilities, and how far back they go, is phenomenal. Some of the research that I've got and some of the information suggests that the Anunnaki were among the first beings that came out of the first creation source together, and when we talk about the fallen angelics, the fallen angels, that the Anunnaki are most likely that group of beings, or among those groups of beings that became the fallen angelics and started doing this rogue stuff throughout all of creation, and have been doing it for not just thousands of millions, but billions of years, and possibly even longer. And so the Anunnaki story is huge. It is a much bigger story than we can imagine. Also keep in mind the devastation that we had on this planet with the so-called flood, the biblical flood, or whatever you might call it. There are various researchers and scientists that provide phenomenal evidence geologically and astronomically and scientifically that there were these upheavals in the last 12 to 15,000 years that would have destroyed large parts of this planet. So the people that survived in the last 12,000 years would have, come together and lived in communities, built structures to the best of their ability, often imitating the technology that they had handed down to them by the gods of the Anunnaki, advanced technology and tools that they didn't really understand how they work, but they would often imitate and create such tools and artifacts, but they did not work. And let's just look at a simple example. Like how many of us would be able to build a laser beam? We don't understand the technology of magnetrons and klystrons. The average guy on the street. So if you've been using a laser beam and you take it apart and you see how it works, and then suddenly there's a calamity and you have to build another laser beam, very few people will be able to recreate a laser beam, and yet this is what it looks like and this is what it can do. But unfortunately, your imitation laser beam is not going to have the same effect. And this is what we see in more recent history. But that's just the recent history. The real good, juicy stuff happened, 100, 200, 300,000 years ago.
Do you think the Anunnaki probably seeded many places other than planet Earth?
There's no doubt about that. There seems to be a lot of evidence for that. Evidence. We have to assume that they did this. They didn't just do this on one planet. They are masters of manipulating reality, masters of bending time, masters of traveling through time, masters of doing all kinds of things that we're only starting to understand, dimensional manipulation and all that kind of stuff. So the Anunnaki story, as I said, is much larger than we imagine. Humanity is under full-blown onslaught where there's a war against humanity to reduce the human population. They're trying every trick in the book. And somehow it's not working, and that's the big question we should be asking is, why are all the attempts to destroy and kill off humans are not really working? The human population is still growing. And what are we going to do about overcoming the manipulation of humanity, and what are we going to do about the continuing growing population? And the only way we can deal with this is firstly internalizing what has happened over the last few 100,000 years, how we've been manipulated as a species, dumbed down and turned into obedient soldiers. And then what do we do with that knowledge and information? And this is where the Ubuntu philosophy of ancient African cultures, the unity within community rather than competition, breaking down the hierarchical structure of competition and authority, and instilling a culture of cooperation rather than competition to create abundance amongst humanity rather than scarcity, because we live on an abundant planet and not a planet of scarcity. And those are some very simple steps that we need to take to start turning back this exploding humanity and bringing it back to a beautiful planet of harmonic resonance and abundance for all. So this is why I believe the knowledge that we've gained from the last few 100,000 years, the work that I've done, the work that many brilliant scholars have done and shared with us, we need to take that information and put it to good use for humanity. There's overwhelming evidence that there are some ETs out there that are desperate for our DNA, that different timelines, different dimensions, whatever you want to call it, ETs that have caused some serious trouble in ancient times, in past, in different timelines, that have pretty much caused their own demise. I believe they're the victims of breaching the Prime Directive. And again, people that think I'm crazy that I keep quoting Star Trek, there's a lot more to it. And if you think about Star Trek for the last 50 years or whatever, pretty much everything we've learned from Star Trek or seen on Star Trek has either become reality or is becoming reality, right? And this is what's happening here. I think that some of the ETs that have come here and manipulated humanity and caused problems in other parts of creation are now suffering the consequences of breaching the Prime Directive, messing with the Prime Resonance frequency, and now experiencing their own demise and trying everything they can to prevent the destruction of their species.
Your headline of your book, Slave Species of the Gods, kind of tells us that people later on have interpreted that these beings, these extraterrestrials, were the gods that I think could be in Genesis and the rest of the Bible. Is that accurate?
It is very much so, I mean, the Bible is a phenomenal book. Really, it is filled with so many levels and layers of information. You know, you got the soap opera sitting on top. If you read the soap opera, you'll remain forever confused. The moment you look below the surface and you start decoding what the Bible actually tells you, it tells you that the humanity was created by these other advanced beings. And then if you go one layer deeper, therein have you got the deeper encoded message and the knowledge, which I believe comes from the Anunnaki or the Elohim themselves, as Micheal Ledwith actually very, very eloquently describes how the Elohim are quoted in the opening phrase of the Bible, because the opening phrase of the Bible actually, the original Hebrew phrase, says that the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. It does not say, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The original translation actually states, the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. And this is very important information. Once you've got that, then all the knowledge that you read and the information in the Bible changes dramatically. So there's advanced knowledge of the laws of nature, of the source of creation, the resonance fields, the sound, the light, the combination of it, the manifestation of physical form out of nothing. All of this is encoded in the Bible. But unfortunately, it is covered by this soap opera of disinformation that leads billions of people into confusion. Very similar to the stone circles in southern Africa, but not quite the same. It seems that crop circles are very powerful energy devices that carry a lot of information, and they broadcast and emit either frequencies and resonance that are either good for humanity or they're bad for humanity. And there seems to be some research that has shown overwhelming evidence for the fact that they're actually different groups of beings, some malicious with malicious intent, like the guys that are spraying chemtrails on us, that are creating crop circles that support this mind control, mind numbing, human obedience to higher authority, and these crop circles that emanate and resonate those frequencies, while then there are others that are neutralizing those frequencies and actually emit resonance that awakens the human DNA, that connects the soul and the spirit to higher consciousness that we are obviously connected to, and allows us to recognize who we are and see through the deception.
What happened? It's just like people vanished that put this together. They almost left the blueprint there, and they're gone.
Yeah, big question. That really puzzles me. But what the latest discovery and mind-blowing discovery, especially like I mentioned right at the beginning of the show, is the discovery of the fossils, the mud fossils of giant beings and strange animals, the almost sort of reptilian, dinosaur-like animals. I mean, it's incredible. We got shoulder blades, we got teeth, we have hearts, giant hearts, we have lungs and kidneys and feet and parts of beings that are much larger than we are. We potentially have a heart that weighs about 100 tons. I'm just, put this into context. You've got to really have an open mind to see the true history of this planet and how it's gone through changes and possibly, recalibrated and restarted many times. So when we discover some of these ancient tools and artifacts, they come from different periods at different times. What I'm fascinated by are the tools and artifacts, like I mentioned, the donut-shaped stones or the toroidal stones with the cone-shaped tools. They seem to come from the same kind of era, and I believe they were Anunnaki tools or someone closely related to the Anunnaki. And I don't know, did I ever tell you the story of the Taurus stone that crashed the TSA system at the Doha International Airport?
No, what happened?
Well, I was on my way. This is 2013. I was going to visit Nassim Haramein in Hawaii, and at his resonance project, and they invited me to come and do a presentation to them, which they loved, by the way. And apparently, I was the first invited speaker to address their team of scientists there. I thought, let me take a present for Nassim that's to do with sound and resonance. And I took the best Taurus stone that I had, and I put it in my bag, and we flew out via Doha, Qatar, which is probably one of the most technologically advanced airports in the world. It's sort of Arab money on steroids. And when I jumped on a plane to go to Chicago, the plane was delayed, and suddenly they called me off the plane, and there were 5 guys with guns around my bag, and next to the plane, saying, "Open your bag, there's a security threat." So I realized it was my stone.
And everybody's watching you, right?
Yeah, and now I'm sweating, and so I opened the bag, and the stone is among my clothes there, wrapped up in bubble wrap and with packing tape. Now, imagine trying to undo that with your bare hands with 5 guys with guns looking down at you, and you're sweating profusely in the morning heat of the desert. It wasn't easy, but eventually I opened it up, and all the time while I'm doing this, I'm thinking, what am I going to tell them? I can't tell them this is ancient advanced technology, because then this is the end, And this is why they raided the Baghdad Museum to get the ancient advanced technology.
Right.
Exactly. So I'm sitting with one of these tools in my hands, and I'm thinking, I'm just say it's African arts and crafts. African arts and crafts. Everyone's got one of these. Nothing to worry about. And that's what I told them. And there was a tall African guy among them, and he sort of leaned over the guys with their guns, and he said, "Oh, I've seen that before." And I think, in hindsight, I realized he diffused the tension. And it took me many months, probably more than a year afterwards, to realize that they knew exactly what they were looking for. They didn't ask me to check the rest of my bag. They were after to see what that stone was. Because when I produced the stone, they were happy with it. So they were obviously told, there is a strange-looking stone in the bag. Look at it. Right? This is really weird stuff, man. And then when I got back on the plane, the captain had come out of the cockpit, and the captain said, "Whatever is in that bag crashed the TSA security system. This is why they prevented the plane from taking off." But then they still let me get on the plane and fly away. So I'm not sure what happened there. This is a real story. I'm not making this up. There were witnesses around me. And so when I say we're dealing with advanced ancient technology, we have the TSA, Homeland Security, to thank for giving us the scientific evidence to prove that.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is. We have had some incredible encounters. People meditate, they get downloads, they get visions and information and lucid dreams and so forth. What the one information I've been told is, don't go into the stone circles. Stay on the outside, because these were machines. You're not supposed to go into the machine, but the resonance effect of the stone circles from the outside is very healing and very very empowering to the human body, because it uses the natural frequencies of Gaia. So we have found some unbelievable scientific evidence and stories of healing happening to people, either inside or outside the stone circles. So much so that even this research group that's with me right now have already recorded. We've been recording statistics. Body statistics and so forth, temperatures and so forth, a visible improvement across the research group, which is 12 people, visible improvement of statistics of your body once you've had interaction with the stone circles. So that's really a very new breakthrough discovery, but even more so, I've had at least one, but several more people that have claimed they've been cured of cancer when they came into contact with the stone circles.
Really?
One lady that is in Vermont, USA, told me that I saved her life. She came on one of the Sacred Sites tours with me. This was in 2014, I think. And she came here thinking that this was going to be her last trip, and then they came back to the USA, and she went to have a checkup, and the cancer was gone. And she came to me in Vermont the last time I saw her, and she thanked me for saving her life, because the stone circles or Adam's calendar, we're not sure which one it was, cured her cancer. And this is not the only one I've heard. I've heard many other people give me similar stories of how their health has improved after being exposed to the stone circles.
Can you feel the energy in the circle if one's in it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about it. People that are sensitive to frequencies and energy feel it immediately. They will tell you what energy they feel. And some people get quite violently ill. They go into the stone circles, and especially Adam's calendar has a profound effect on the physiology, people's physiology. Some people go in there and they just can't handle it. I've had one person walk in there. This is one. It happened once, but it happened. One person walked in there and literally ran out of the circular sort of enclosure of Adam's calendar, ran outside and started to vomit. So absolutely, you can feel the energies. These are machines. These are powerful energy machines. Just that they work at such high frequencies that we are starting to, only discover their true power today. Once you start getting into the deep spiritual aspects of what we're talking about here and the deeper levels of consciousness and unity consciousness and how things manifest out of sound and resonance into physical form, you realize that there's a conscious, very deep consciousness and creation aspect to all this reality around us. It is becoming very, very clear that everything we encounter is a consequence of creation by some higher intelligence or higher consciousness or something like that. I'm not quite sure how to put it. It's just getting more and more confusing, and at the same time more and more enlightening and relieving, because it brings relief to this insanity we find ourselves in, which, by the way, the Ubuntu movement does as well. We started to talk about that before the break. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And the more you go down this rabbit hole, George, you've been doing this for years. You've interviewed more people than anybody else on all these different subjects. The more you go down this rabbit hole, the more you realize how little we know.
That's right. And the rabbit holes lead to other rabbit holes. Exactly.
It's just a never-ending bottomless pit. Then you start talking about NASA and the lies of NASA and what's really going out in space. Can rocket engines and craft navigate in space? And then you start realizing, well, that's not possible either. So everything seems to be this bottomless pit of lies and deception. And what I'm finding fascinating is that the research that we're finding and doing around the stone circles is giving us a very strong foundation, because it's here. We're not imagining it. There are millions of stone circles. My estimate is that there are more than 10 million of these stone circles in various clusters around Southern Africa, South Africa and Zimbabwe mainly. And it's all connected to gold mining, terraforming, oxygen and atmosphere generation, and who knows what else. So it's here. We're not imagining it. And we're now just rediscovering the simplicity of creation, and how once you start to really get into and connecting with sound and resonance and manifesting physical form with sound and resonance, how simple things can be. It's just we need to reactivate the DNA, the dormant DNA in our bodies, which is happening at a rapid rate now. The higher the consciousness, the higher the feedback mechanism, the higher thoughts we can think, the more it unlocks our own DNA, and it helps us wake up and reach high levels of enlightenment and consciousness. And it's just a beautiful journey that we're experiencing. We truly are living at very, very interesting times. And at the same time, discovering the enslavement principles of the banking fraternities and how they've colluded for thousands of years to enslave humanity and turn us into absolute slaves, and breaking down those walls of enslavement without any violent opposition or conflict, by simply creating an alternative, so we make the existing system obsolete. And in essence, George, that's what the Ubuntu movement is doing so that we don't have to labor that too much.
What got you involved in investigating this, Michael?
Well, just like you, I guess, or anyone else. I was never happy with the answers I was getting at school. But I must say, there was one moment. I was in standard 6 in South Africa. No, sorry, standard 7. So that would be grade 9 in biology. I was in biology class, and the biology teacher was telling us about how cells regenerate and how millions and billions of cells regenerate in our bodies all the time and so forth. And then I just suddenly realized, at the age of 15, I just said, hold on, so if cells keep regenerating all the time, why do we die? And I asked the biology teacher, well, if that's the case, then why do we die? And the answer was, well, we die because that's just the way it is. And I said, well, hold on, that's not the answer I'm looking for. That's not an answer. That is just a knee-jerk reaction. And I think that was probably, in my life, one of the key moments when I started questioning, why do we die? Why don't we live forever? Why are they lying to us? Why are things not, different, and so forth? So, and then actually, when I was 19, first year university, I'll never forget sitting by the swimming pool on the weekend at men's residence, and somebody came past me and dropped this book in my lap, and it was Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods.
Yeah.
And that just changed my life.
By the way, they just arrested a truck driver in Peru yesterday for driving around the Nazca lines.
Oh, no. Are you serious?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Well, you know that those whole mountaintops in Peru around the Nazca lines, I think somewhere there, where the entire mountaintop has just disappeared. Well,
where'd they go?
I've just shared with you the technology that was most likely used to do that. Once you got the phaser beam cone-shaped tool technology, you can do anything. You can chop down the whole top of a mountain, flatten it, so you can use it to put your structures on or whatever you want to put on there, and move it. Just chop the mountain down and lift it up with your two phaser beam cones, the way that Ed Leeds-Kalnin moved the giant blocks around in Coral Castle. And, he was seen using ice cream cones, and I've connected that to the cone-shaped tools. He somehow figured this out and used cone-shaped tools to levitate those giant blocks into position. Everything is sound and resonant. The great minds and scientists like Nikola Tesla and many others have shared this information with us. Everything is just sound, resonance, and vibration. So I'm now becoming very comfortable with the fact that there could be an infinite number of dimensions around us, within us, everywhere. It's just a different frequency. The way you tune your radio to a different frequency, your television set to a different frequency, while you tuned into one TV channel, that's your reality. The other TV channels don't exist until sometimes when you're switching from one radio or one TV channel to another. And the old TVs today, it doesn't happen anymore. But with the old TV and radio sets, you could get right in between the channels where you can hear both radio stations playing at the same time, or two TV channels showing at the same time. It's like that's the crossover. So every now and then, somehow these different dimensions cross over. Everybody says that. Where did they go? Well, the question is, why do we assume they went anywhere? Let me rephrase this. Many people still believe that the Anunnaki or the remnants of the Anunnaki or the royal bloodlines that run the world or whoever the puppet masters are that are keeping us all in this little slave chamber, they somewhere on Earth. They haven't necessarily left. Just because we can't see them and they don't make themselves visible to us doesn't mean they've left. And this is really what we're working on with the Ubuntu movement, is creating a new solution, a simple solution for this insane misery that most people find themselves in. Finding a new alternative, creating a new social structure without fighting the existing one, because that's an old paradigm thinking. Any kind of thought of resistance or fighting or rebellion is old paradigm, and it creates conflict, and it doesn't work. It's never worked. It's not a solution. So over a 12-year period with the Ubuntu movement, we've learned from the past. We've looked at the ancient human history. We've looked at all the bloodshed and trauma and human trauma and psychological and physical trauma, and realized that we can't carry on in that same kind of paradigm. We've got to create a new system that makes the old system obsolete. And that is just beautifully unfolded over 12 years. And that's where the Ubuntu movement sits right now, where we have mayors in Canada, USA, Australia, South Africa, embracing our Ubuntu contributionism philosophy and beginning to implement it in their towns at an increasing rate as we speak. I've explored the world on Google Earth. Again, how accurate that is, we don't know anymore. But I've found stone circles pretty much everywhere, and the United States is no exception. There are stone circles all over the USA, South America. Obviously, the stone circles in Scotland and in Ireland especially are very famous. What I haven't been able to find, except with the stone circles in Jordan, those very strange, mysterious stone circles that popped up on the radar about 5 years ago, those are the only ones that I've been able to connect structurally and with a possible similar kind of intent to the ones here in South Africa and Southern Africa. But the others that I've seen around the world, I haven't been able to see the kind of network or cluster where they connected with the channels to each other, creating a cluster of stone circles. So, but that doesn't mean that those channels are not there, because just like you find here, often many of the old original connected cluster has been destroyed through farming or town planning, and then later civilizations come and they rebuild the wall on the original foundations. So it seems like there's a stone circle, but it's actually a very modern stone circle from the last few hundred years, built on the destroyed foundations below the soil that are actually still connected to each other. And we know this because we've measured it here. We can measure the energetic flow, even though there are no channels visible. There's still the tools that we use, the machines or the whatever devices, tell us that there's a flow of energy from here to over there.
Michael, how tall are some of these stones in these circles?
They vary, George. Most of the stones are actually not that big. The biggest ones I've found are probably maybe about 2 or 3 tons. But it's not. We're not dealing with megalithic structures like you find in Peru or Stonehenge or the Baalbek structures. These are different kind of machines. These are think about sand on a metal plate. How the sand, when you put sound frequencies through the metal plate, how the sand automatically navigates itself towards the shape of the sound itself. That's what it seems like happened here. They had a way of just resonating that part of the earth, and the stones somehow resonated themselves into position. I don't know. The jury is out on how this happened. So this is why they're not such big stones, because they literally were probably more like sand on a metal plate.
Michael Tellinger, thank you so much. The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.